tend to think the term hero is overused in today's society, but I dare say that Elon Musk is kind of a modern day hero, at least in the realm of free speech. By buying Twitter and wrestling it away from the censor-happy leftists in Silicon Valley, he's helped create more space for free speech. Online has become the new public square, and he's carved out a portion of that square, and a substantial one at that, and helped protect it from censorship. And that's commendable. Now, you might argue, well, it's not a big deal for him. He's got plenty of FU money, and he can come out and say what he thinks, and no matter what, he's still going to have all the money he ever needs in his life. So it's easier for him to be a champion for free speech and to come out and speak his mind, even if it's controversial and ends up costing him. But there's still courage in that. It certainly hasn't seemed to help him. It's only hurt him financially. I mean, he's made a lot of enemies of powerful people, and it has affected his other companies.
Please stop.
You hope
Don't advertise.
you don't want them to advertise?
No.
What do you mean?
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go f yourself.
But
Go f yourself. Is that clear? I hope it is. Hey, Bob, if you're in the audience.
well, let me ask you then.
That's how I feel.
Because that's the sort of culture we live in now. If you come out and take bold stances, or just say what you think with conviction, there's a cancel culture that comes out and tries to hurt you in whatever way they can. Whether it's getting you deplatformed or trying to attack you financially, trying to get sponsors to drop you and things like that. So, yeah, he's got plenty of cash in the bank. He's got a big cushion where he'll always be able to live comfortably. It still takes courage to come out and take those hits. He doesn't have to do it. But anyway, I've gotten back onto Twitter. I have an X account now. I made it for the Fletch report. Specifically, I wanted to have a X account for my channel. So once I created a profile and got back on Twitter, the first thing I did was follow Elon Musk, and he's the gift that keeps on giving. Almost every day he's got funny or insightful posts. And back on December 25th, so Christmas this year, he posted an excerpt from a Michael Crichton talk. So I believe he's quoting Michael Crichton in this post. But it's a few paragraphs describing the Gell-Mann amnesia effect, which I'm not familiar with that term, Gell-Mann amnesia effect, but I am familiar with the concept, so that's what we're going to talk about and get into in the rest of this video. So reading from Elon's post, media carries with it a credibility that is totally undeserved. You have all experienced this in what I call the Murray-Gell-Mann amnesia effect. Briefly stated, the Gell-Mann amnesia effect is as follows. You open up the newspaper to an article on some subject you know well. In Murray's case, physics. In mine, show business. You read the article and you see the journalist has absolutely no understanding of either the facts or the issues. Often the article is so wrong it actually presents the story backwards, reversing cause and effect. I call these the wet streets cause rain stories. Papers full of them. In any case, you read with exasperation or amusement the multiple errors in the story. And then you turn the page to national or international affairs and read as if the rest of the paper was somehow more accurate about Palestine than the baloney you just read. You turn the page and forget what you know. That is the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. I'd point out that it does not operate in other areas of our life, in ordinary life. In ordinary life, if someone consistently exaggerates or lies to you, you soon discount everything they say. But when it comes to the media, we believe against evidence that it is probably worth our time to read the other parts of the paper. So that's the quote that Elon's attributing to Michael Crichton, and then underneath that Elon posts himself, that's why it's important to have citizen journalists who are experts in their subject, or on-the-ground eyewitnesses versus reporting from a distance. And I would speculate that everybody starts with this amnesia effect a little bit, because when you're young and naive and gullible, you tend to trust authority figures, and the mainstream media is sort of a authority figure. You know, a reporter on TV or an anchor on a news network must know what they're talking about, or why would they be in that position? So there's somewhat natural to just invest some credibility in them. I guess in my case, I got over that amnesia effect rather quickly compared to other people. From a very young age, I was very skeptical of the media. I got over my amnesia faster than other people, evident by, the millions of people in their 50s and 60s who still watch cable news as if it's at all reliable. But yeah, one of the things that really taught me to mistrust the media was seeing them get wrong the things that I actually had quite a bit of knowledge about. Just to give a couple examples, from a young age, I had a lot of knowledge of the firearms industry and the laws pertaining to owning and buying firearms in America. Reason being, I worked in that. My parents owned a range and gun store, and growing up there, I worked behind the counter, so quite a bit of familiarity with the industry and how it works and what you have to go through to buy a gun, just because I worked in the industry and I dealt with it every day. And then I would watch the mainstream media report on the industry, and I would see them get things wrong all the time, misrepresent things all the time. And I realized that, I'm not a professional journalist by any stretch of the imagination. I have no formal schooling in the subject, but I could do a better job representing the facts to the public than they could. I'll try to keep this video short, but just to give one example, I remember in the early 2000s, internet commerce was really taking off and everything was beginning to be sold online. And the same is true of the gun industry. The rise of sites like Auction Arms and Gunbroker. I'm sure there's other auction sites that they work kind of like eBay for guns. Basically, they bring buyers and sellers of different items together, whether it's guns or ammo or accessories. And I remember a reporter reporting on this and rhetorically asked the question, should you be able to buy a gun on the internet? As if it's some big scary thing. He left the impression with the audience that you can just buy a gun online and it works like Amazon, where you buy a gun and a day or two later a package shows up on your door. And that's not how it works at all. Basically, all the website does is put together buyers and sellers. To actually complete the transaction, there's a whole process that you have to go through, and it can't just be shipped to your gun. That would be illegal and probably some kind of felony conviction if you got caught shipping a gun across state lines to a private individual. So here's how it actually works. Let's say you buy a gun on Gunbroker. Let's say you live in the state of Illinois, and the seller lives in Texas. You bid on the firearm, you win the bid, and now you have to complete the transaction. Well, in order to do that, you need to find somebody with a federal firearms license in your state. We'll abbreviate that FFL for short. So you need to seek out somebody with an FFL. Usually that's a gun store or a gunsmith, someone that's federally licensed to be engaged in the business of buying and selling firearms. So you find a gun store with an FFL, you make arrangements for them to receive the gun for you, and that's where the firearm will end up being shipped to. And then on the other end, the seller in Texas needs to do the same thing. He's got to go find an FFL, federal firearms license in Texas, and he has to make arrangements with them to ship the gun from their premise to the FFL in Illinois. And there's a whole process that goes along with this. So when the seller brings the gun to the FFL in Texas, that gun store needs to log that gun into their A&D books, their acquisition disposition books. So they have a record of who they received the firearm from and who they sent the firearm to. Same thing when it gets to Illinois. That gun store is going to log that gun into their A&D books. Then they need to conduct a background check on the buyer, the person who's actually going to take possession of the gun. And once they pass that background check, then they can log that gun out to that person and they can take possession of it. So all that detail I just gave you, the reporter left out and just left the audience with the impression that you could just order a gun online and it'll show up at your door. It's not how it works. I know because I worked in this industry, and we used to receive guns for people all the time and do background checks on them so they could, if they passed, they could take possession of the firearm they bought. So again, with getting back to that Gell-Mann amnesia effect, if I know they get this wrong, if they get the stuff I know wrong, how can I trust them on anything else? It's not to say that they get everything else they say wrong. It's just I can't take their word for it. So it's I have very low confidence in anything that I hear in the media, unless I can verify it. If they tell me it's 55 degrees outside and it's partly sunny, and I can look out the window and see the thermometer says 55 degrees and I can see that it's partly sunny, well then I can believe them. But anything I don't know, I put very little weight in. It's like gossip. And I'll give one more example from more contemporary times. I took a deep interest in the Kyle Rittenhouse case for a lot of reasons. One, it happened in the state that I lived in, so I was close to the trial in that way. Two, I was curious to see if a kid can get a fair trial, or I guess he's a young adult at this point. If a person can get a fair trial in today's age, because from the beginning you had people in the mainstream media as well as politicians coming out and race baiting the kid and deciding he was guilty before there was even a trial.
The one that we hear over and over is, horror of horror, he crossed state lines, Jesse. Kyle Rittenhouse crossed state lines. And then usually you hear with an illegal gun, which turned out not to be true. But here's something Matt Taibbi put together that kind of gets to the heart of it. Listen.
Driving across state borders. He's driving across state lines.
Across the state line, across state lines.
Across state lines.
Across state lines.
If you look at the Rittenhouse case, he crossed state lines.
Drives up to events.
Across state lines.
Came across state lines.
Kyle Rittenhouse, who traveled across state lines.
From out of state, out of his own state.
Came across state borders. Whenever you have a situation where a 17-year-old is crossing state lines,
white teenager.
He crosses a state line, drives 30 minutes into Kenosha.
Remember, he came across the line.
He crossed state lines.
Crossed state lines.
Across state lines.
He crossed state lines.
Kyle Rittenhouse, who crossed state lines.
The month-long trial gained international attention, with some in the media and politicians accused of acting as the juror from the sidelines. Kyle has been slandered as a white supremacist, with Joe Biden even making the suggestion to his millions of followers. In September last year, before Joe Biden was elected as president, he tweeted that then-President Donald Trump refused to disavow white supremacists on the debate stage and included a photo of Kyle in the montage. The teenager sat down with Tucker where he discussed the trial by media, even issuing a message for the sitting US president to go back and look at the evidence before making such statements. He said he is not a racist person and certainly not a white supremacist, even vocally supporting the Black Lives Matter movement.
That's a troubling development. How's somebody supposed to get a fair trial in this country when the president or president-elect comes out and calls you a white supremacist? Without any basis in fact, he just accuses you of that because reasons. So anyway, with this deep interest in the trial, I actually followed it. It was recorded and televised. I mean, you could find basically live stream of it online. So I watched all that. I knew all the details. And then I would see how the media was covering the case and what they were saying about Rittenhouse. And the disconnect was enormous. To highlight that, I'll describe a personal interaction I had with somebody I know that's actually reasonably intelligent, but apparently dumb enough to still watch the news and believe what he sees. Anyways, it was around this friend, and somehow the subject of Kyle Rittenhouse came up, and right away he was like, I don't know. This kid crossed state lines with this gun and goes to a community that he has no connection to, and he came up with all these reservations, and every single fact that he thought he was citing was wrong. Kyle Rittenhouse didn't cross state lines with a gun. The gun he was in possession with wasn't illegal, and that was another thing the media reported. And he had a connection to Kenosha, which is where the incident happened. He lived in Antioch, Illinois, which is near the border, the Wisconsin border. That's where his mother lived, but his father lived in Kenosha, which is just a few minutes over the border. And he had a deep connection to that community. His father lived there, and he actually worked in Kenosha, so he didn't just randomly decide to go there and help protect businesses. He actually had an investment in that community. But my friend, everything that he thought he knew about the case was wrong, and he got it all from watching the news. I could make this video hours long if I wanted to go through the dozens and dozens of examples that I've observed of the news media just getting things terribly wrong. But I think I made the point. So my challenge to the viewer is, don't have this Gell-Mann amnesia. You know they get stuff wrong all the time. You've seen them do it. Don't turn the page and just blindly believe what you read on the next page. And that also highlights the importance of needing a free speech space, needing these online forums. And I don't have any delusions about them. There's a lot of crap that gets put and passed around on social media, but it's also a platform where those amateur journalists that Elon was talking about, people that just are experts in a particular field, can come out and share information. And when the mainstream gets the story terribly wrong, this gives them an outlet to call them out and give the other side of the story, give the facts that the media left out. And that's why it's important to protect those free speech spaces. And why I think Elon does humanity a service, does our society in America a service by buying Twitter the way he did and turning it into more of a free speech space, undoing a lot of the censorship that took place prior to him taking control of it. And there's other people doing that as well. I think Rumble is another. They're more of a alternative to YouTube and a more free speech alternative. I hope that they continue to grow, and I hope, if YouTube doesn't change, I hope that someday Rumble grows to outshine them. So that's my 2 cents. If you don't have an X/formerly Twitter account already, consider making one. And if you do, subscribe to Elon Musk. Very entertaining and sometimes very insightful. You've been watching the Fletch Report. If you're hearing this, it means you've made it to the end of the video. But before you click onto the next thing and continue down whatever rabbit hole you're on YouTube or Rumble, I've got a small favor to ask. If you found value in my content and you want to help the channel out, the best thing you can do is share it with somebody else that you think will find value in it. Don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to see more. Links to the channel on YouTube and Rumble will be provided below. Additionally, I'm making a Facebook page for the channel as well as a X/formerly Twitter. Feel free to follow me on those platforms as well. If you're feeling exceptionally generous, provided in the description below will be a link to Buy Me a Coffee, which is the online equivalent of a tip jar. Thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting the channel.